Chapter 1. I was reborn. Reborn to the very day Oscar confessed to me. At the barbecue stall, the table was crowded with skewers in a messy spread, while friends huddled nearby telling jokes. Oscar was dressed in the CS high school uniform, black suit pinned with the school badge. Neat and proper, his leather shoes shining bright. That aura of nobility on him clashed so harshly with the street's smoky, down-to-earth liveliness. He walked straight up to me. "Jennifer, I like you too. Let's be together." The lamb skewer in my hand slipped and dropped with a paw. Before me still stood that youthful face, silver-rimmed glasses perched on his nose. Refined and handsome, the very face I had loved for 10 years. From deep inside, a voice surged up. "Say yes! Hurry up and say yes!" Our friends were cheering and egging us on. I stood up and said calmly, "I refuse." Oscar's eyes widened slightly. He surely hadn't expected me to reject him. After all, everyone knew I liked Oscar, chasing him with what could only be described as humiliating persistence. "Jennifer, think this through." His voice was calm. That was indeed his usual style, staying composed no matter the situation. "Well, I did like you before." I smiled brightly. "But now, I don't anymore." Oscar turned his back and left right away. I waved to my friends. "Keep eating. Just a small hiccup. Don't let it spoil the mood." I bit down on a skewer of meat, delicious. Back when I was the young madam of the Oscar family, if I so much as dared to eat at a street stall, negative headlines would flood the media the very next day. It's better just being myself. Thinking it over carefully, the tragic end of my love with Oscar in my previous life wasn't caused by him alone. I had my share of blame too. In my first year of high school, my 14 years as a left-behind child finally ended. My parents, who had been doing business overseas, returned home in glory. To make it up to me, they pulled strings to transfer me from experimental No. 1 high into CS high. Around here, CS high is nicknamed the aristocratic high school. On my first day of transfer, I fell for Oscar at first sight, and thus began my long journey of devoted pursuit. If Oscar was thirsty, I handed him water. If Oscar caught a cold, I brought him medicine. If Oscar played the piano, I applauded. At CS, the thing I kept at the longest was acting like a human alarm clock, every morning greeting him with a good morning, and every afternoon with a see you tomorrow. The result of my shamelessness, no, my persistence, was that Oscar went from politely rejecting me to eventually nodding and replying with a good morning. Our relationship truly changed because of a kidnapping. I spotted Oscar walking alone from a distance and rushed over happily to greet him. The very next second, 2 burly men jumped out of a van and shoved us both inside. Their target was Oscar. I was collateral. In the depths of the mountains, the kidnappers broke Oscar's leg without hesitation and locked us together in a basement. "They're asking my parents for 500,000, and your parents for 10 million. Oscar, so your family is actually this rich?" I murmured. Oscar endured the pain and let out a faint laugh. Something must have gone wrong with the kidnappers. For a whole day and night, no one came down. Both Oscar and I feared we might die trapped here, so we found a shovel in the basement and smashed the door open. Outside, there was no one. They could come back at any time. "You should go first," Oscar said calmly. I glanced at his leg, then squatted down with my back toward him. "Get on. We'll leave together. I won't leave you here alone." I turned my head to smile at him. "Don't worry. I grew up rough in the countryside. I've got plenty of strength." That night was endlessly long. Carrying Oscar on my back, I dragged my feet through the thick forest. At the hospital, Oscar asked me why I saved him. "Because I like you," I said in a sing-song tone, tilting my head with a playful smile. Oscar stared at my face, silent for a long while. Back then, I felt so disheartened. Oscar never pushed me away, but he never gave me a clear answer either. He probably didn't like me at all. I decided to transfer schools. At CS High, aside from chasing after Oscar, my life was actually miserable. Everyone there looked polite on the surface but kept their distance at heart. They all had flawless plans for their future. I didn't belong in their world. When I gathered with my old friends at roadside stalls, laughing and joking, I felt a familiar sense of peace again. But it was exactly at that time that Oscar confessed to me. I said yes, and that was the beginning of my misfortune. Oscar was the heir to his family's business, burdened with responsibility and expectations. Being with me was considered a stain on his family. to erase that stain. Oscar's family tried everything, and in the end they grudgingly compromised. After we graduated from college, Oscar and I overcame countless obstacles and finally got married. At our wedding, many people whispered behind my back, calling me scheming and materialistic. I told myself that true love could conquer all. In the first year, I was asked to give up my career and obediently be the daughter-in-law of the Oscar family. In the second year, I struggled at endless banquets and social gatherings, where every word and gesture had to be flawless, while I also witnessed countless filthy scandals among the wealthy. In the third year, we still had no children. Tabloids began publishing gossip about Oscar. In the fourth year, everything exhausted me. Meanwhile, Oscar thrived in the business world, commanding influence with ease. Our relationship hit rock bottom. He said to me, "Jennifer, let's go abroad for surrogacy." I sneered back. "Surrogacy is illegal." Oscar frowned slightly. I knew that to people like him, laws were nothing more than tools money could bend. "Jennifer, I need a child. Then have one with someone else," I answered, utterly weary. By the 5th year of our marriage, my feelings for Oscar had worn away completely. I finally admitted this marriage was a failure. I asked Oscar for a divorce. The phone rang, and a woman's triumphant voice came through. "You and Oscar were never from the same world." Immediately after, a car rushed toward me at an unnaturally high speed. No way, getting a divorce isn't enough to take my life, right? Chapter 2. After rejecting Oscar's confession, I quickly transferred schools. What does it feel like to be reborn only to face the college entrance exam again? Answer: hell mode. Endless test papers to write. Endless books to memorize. Life repeated day after day, monotonous, yet strangely reassuring. I clutched the strap of my school bag. Walking home, at the alley entrance, a group of street punks leaned against the wall smoking. One of them gave me a malicious look and yanked me into the alley. A few more blocked my way. I sighed, unzipped my school bag, and reached for money. "Hey," a voice came. The punks squinted toward it. Oscar stood at the alley's mouth, backlit by the light. He walked over, took off the glasses on his nose, and handed them to me. Stunned, I took them. Oscar smiled at me. The next second, he landed a punch squarely on the leader's face, and chaos broke out. Oscar's figure weaved nimbly past their attacks, flooring one in just a few seconds. Amid the groans scattered across the ground, Oscar pulled me tightly into his arms, with such force it felt like a long-awaited reunion. I shoved him hard. "Oscar, are you okay? Why did you suddenly stop liking me?" he asked. "When it comes to feelings, there's no reason. If you don't like someone anymore, then you just don't." I lowered my head, just like how I could never explain why I had fallen for Oscar in the first place. "Young Master Oscar, thanks for today." I stepped past him to leave, but he grabbed me. "Jennifer, do you also?" Oscar's brows furrowed. "Also what?" I asked in confusion, though something struck me deep inside. In my previous life, Oscar only learned judo for self-defense after being kidnapped. But this time, with his leg only just healed, he shouldn't have had the chance to learn it yet. Oscar still couldn't finish that word. I said, "Oscar, you're acting strange today." On my way back, I grumbled endlessly in my heart. I was reborn to avoid stepping into the grave of marriage. Why should Oscar be reborn too? He was already the winner in life. Weren't all his buffs stacked high enough? Whatever Oscar planned to do after his rebirth, I didn't care. Those old feelings had long been worn away. When I got a text message from him, I didn't even read it before blocking his number. I also deleted every contact related to CS High. By leaving CS, by cutting off that only link, I shouldn't ever cross paths with people from that class again. Heaven gave me another chance to live. It was for me to start a new life properly. So when I saw the flashy sports car parked at the gate of Experimental No. 1 High, a bad feeling sank in my heart. A boy leaned against a pillar, arms crossed. The moment he saw me, his brows arched and a smile tugged at his lips. "Jennifer, you've got guts." "Huh?" Dumping Oscar. Calvin. Oscar's friend, because of certain things in my past life. I loathed this man. "What do you want?" I asked impatiently. Calvin grabbed my wrist and dragged me toward the car. "Oscar wants to see you. He used a lot of force." I couldn't shake him off. and with curious stares constantly cast from the school gate. I finally let him push me into the car. The roar of the engine rang out. Calvin sped eastward toward Mount Hope, driving all the way to Oscar's house. "He's sick, won't take his medicine," Calvin said casually. I pointed at myself. "Am I a doctor?" Calvin clicked his tongue. "Cut the crap. Second floor. Far right, that's Oscar's room. Go." I looked up. Oscar's house was huge, but frighteningly silent. Only after spending enough time with him did I learn the truth. His parents' marriage was a typical business alliance. They were rarely home, each living separately elsewhere, only showing up together before the media when appearances were necessary. In my previous life, the greatest effort they ever made for Oscar was trying to stop him from marrying me. I pushed open Oscar's door. The curtains hung heavy, blocking the sunlight, plunging the room into gloom. Oscar lay on the bed. The medicine by the bedside was untouched. I fumbled for the switch and turned on the light. The soft, warm glow illuminated Oscar's pale face. His features seemed carved by hand, flawless. I remembered my very first day at CS High, when I ran into Oscar rescuing a cat. He crouched down, carefully untying the ropes around the cat's body. The sunlight outlined his focused profile, gentle, compassionate. That was what I'd call the beginning of a doomed fate. Hearing the sound, Oscar turned his head, joy flickering in his eyes. "Jennifer." I handed him both the water and the medicine, without refusal. Oscar quietly swallowed the pills. "I think I've made myself clear. Oscar, I don't like you anymore." My voice was calm. "These past 2 years, it was me clinging to you. I'm sorry." Oscar's lashes trembled slightly, and with the sickly pallor of his face, he looked fragile. "So please stop bothering me. Like today, having Calvin bring me here, that was already disturbing me." "Jennifer, I don't believe it," Oscar said softly. "You wouldn't give up on me that easily." I let out a careless smile. "I came today to put an end to this. Oscar, I'm about to take the college entrance exam, study the major I like, and live an ordinary, simple life. You, if I remember right, you've already been accepted to a foreign university. After graduation, you'll inherit your family's business. Our paths in life are different. Even if we were together, it wouldn't end well." I added, "Without me, your life will still be brilliant. From now on, let's not contact each other again. Let's just be strangers." Without Oscar, my life would finally be mine to choose. Without me, Oscar's life would still shine. I should have realized this sooner. These words were meant for both of us. "Strangers?" Oscar repeated the word, as if provoked. He struggled out of bed and grabbed me as I turned to leave. The next moment, he pressed my head down and kissed me. At such close distance, I opened my eyes wide and saw the madness surging in his gaze. I shoved him hard, weak from illness. Oscar fell to the floor. "What's wrong with you?" I frowned. "Jennifer, what are you doing?" Calvin rushed in from the doorway, eyes filled with alarm as he looked at Oscar on the ground. I wiped my lips. Oscar said, "Calvin, send Jennifer back." His gaze was steady, as if that moment of loss of control had been nothing but my hallucination. "Sorry." Oscar apologized, tilting his head up at me. "Jennifer, I won't disturb you again." Calvin and I left Oscar's house, one after the other, tossing his car keys in his hand. Calvin chuckled. "Jennifer, you're pretty interesting." I shot him a glance. "Hey, did I ever tell you? Oscar isn't someone you can provoke so easily." "My story with Oscar is already over," I repeated firmly. Calvin's hand stilled. For once, his face turned serious. "Then I wish you no regrets in the future." Chapter 3. In this world, no one is truly indispensable. Time can erase everything. I would not regret it. Oscar would one day meet someone truly right for him. In September, with the cicadas of midsummer still chirping, I was admitted into Z University in my hometown. Walking along the endless tree-lined path, youthful faces passed me by one after another. I joined the clubs I liked, picked 2 or 3 interesting electives, made a circle of new friends. Every day was fresh and meaningful. It was then that Lucas burst into my life. By November, when the weather turned cool, I often went to the library to look for books, sitting in my fixed spot where the sunlight poured in, quietly reading for an entire afternoon. I don't know how many days passed like that before a sheet of paper was gently placed in front of me. The pen strokes were natural and free, the lines graceful. It was a sketch of me, head bent, reading. I shifted my gaze. Beside me, a boy grinned, his black hair slightly long, falling soft and clean around his ears. "Hi, I'm Lucas." At the library entrance, that was how he introduced himself. Lucas was someone who brimmed with enthusiasm for everything. After we exchanged contact information, he seemed to show up in every part of my life. When I was about to be late for morning classes, he would ride his bike up to me, patting the back seat. "Hop on." During the 800-meter physical test, as I trudged along the track, I could see Lucas on the other side running to the finish line, raising his arms high and shouting, "Jennifer, you can do it!" Even for evening electives, Lucas would always grab a seat in the back by the window ahead of time, waving at me. "I knew you'd pick this class." Sometimes, after class, we'd walk together. We talked about life, about hobbies, about the future. Lucas was an animation major. He said he wanted to create the greatest animated film ever. When he said that, his eyes shone. It was a light full of conviction, so infectious it made people want to believe in him. He asked me what my dream was. I lowered my head and thought for a long time before saying, "I want to live the most ordinary, simple life, the kind where you can see old age coming from the start." Lucas's gaze was certain, and he nodded. "That's really nice." Gradually, all my friends came to know Lucas. Our lives overlapped more and more. Many of them quietly bet on when Lucas and I would end up together. Lucas's likes and dislikes were always obvious, just as obvious as his feelings for me. In a crowd, his eyes would always find me first. That straightforwardness made me waver. One day in May, Lucas called and told me to come downstairs. From the window, I saw him. At the same moment, he looked up, our eyes meeting. Lucas's smile was dazzling. He led me all the way to Z University's F building, taking the west side elevator. We went straight to the rooftop. At the far south end, to the left, there was a metal ladder. Lucas climbed up first, then reached down a hand toward me. "Come on." Puzzled, I placed my hand in his. The ladder led to the rooftop. When I climbed up and stepped onto it, I froze in place. It was dusk. The hazy twilight stretched endlessly, draping over the buildings, silencing everything beneath. Before my eyes, the evening glow spread across the sky like tides upon tides, shifting from deep blue into soft pink and violet. At the horizon, the last ray of the setting sun melted into golden light, sinking behind the rolling mountains. "Jennifer, I like you, the kind of like where I've planned you into my future, where I want to spend my whole life with you." Lucas's face was blurred in the play of light and shadow. His eyes lowered, his demeanor tense and nervous. "Jennifer, I'm sincere. I'll respect all your choices. I'll give you the life you want." The wind around us felt infinitely distant. I narrowed my eyes with a smile. "All right, let's be together." Lucas lifted his head, his expression instantly brimming with joy. He opened his arms and embraced me. At last, he cupped my face in his hands, and I saw the reflection of myself in his eyes. In that moment, I believed Lucas truly loved me, and that with him, I would surely have a good outcome. During the 4 years of college, Lucas and I grew closer and closer. We met each other's parents, did countless things together, and planned our future side by side. At the graduation dinner, in front of all our friends, Lucas proposed to me, surrounded by cheers and blessings. I smiled as Lucas slipped that platinum ring onto my finger. The streetlights stretched everyone's shadows. Lucas had his arm around my shoulder, and I raised my hand under the light to carefully examine the ring. "Lucas, you actually have pretty good taste in rings." Lucas sounded proud. "I spent months picking this one out." I lowered my hand, and suddenly I felt a gaze on me, staring, unrelenting, fixed on me and Lucas. I turned around. At the street corner, people and cars passed, neon lights glittering faintly. "What is it?" Lucas followed my line of sight. "Nothing." I ignored the sudden unease rising in my chest. After going home, I told my parents about Lucas. They nodded with relief. My father patted my shoulder and said, "Lucas is a good kid. It's a blessing that you and he can be together." I thought back to long ago. At that time, because of my relationship with Oscar, His family cut off my father's lumber business overnight. My father aged 10 years. He sighed and told me Oscar's kind of family was beyond our reach. Back then, I was stubborn, believing everything was just a test on the path of true love with Oscar. I pushed all those unpleasant memories aside and said firmly, Lucas and I will make it to the end. After graduation, Lucas and his like-minded friends founded their own small company, full of ambition, chasing their dream of making animation. Every beginning is difficult. Lucas left early and came home late, often working until dawn in the small apartment we rented. Among Lucas's group, some had connections. At last, they found a promising investor. Lucas said excitedly, "Tonight, Mario and I are meeting the investor. If it works out, our project can keep going. It'll work out." I encouraged him, but late that night, I received a text from Mario. The investor kept forcing Lucas to drink. "Jennifer, can you come pick him up?" Worried, I took a cab and followed the address. The meeting place was a nightclub in the city center, flashing neon, gaudy lights, an air of extravagance and excess. When I found Lucas, he was clutching the sofa, refusing to let go. His cheeks flushed red. "Lucas," I drew out his name. Lucas's dazed eyes flickered with clarity for a moment. He recognized me and murmured, "Jennifer." Beside him, Mario shook his head helplessly. "Funny, he only manages to recognize you when he's drunk out of his mind." I bent down and said softly to Lucas, "Come on, let's go home." Chapter 4. Lucas let me lead him obediently, following Mario as we went downstairs. When the elevator doors opened, the people waiting outside shifted their gaze and suddenly froze. Jennifer?" Calvin still wore that same careless, roguish smile. Beside him, however, Oscar looked much more mature. I gave a polite smile, tightening my grip on Lucas's hand. "Young Master Calvin." "Jennifer, you know young Master Calvin?" Mario asked eagerly. I said, "Not really." Calvin glanced me over, then cast a quick look at Oscar before replying, "Haha, yeah, not really." "Jennifer, weren't we going home?" Lucas mumbled drowsily, his misty eyes fixed on me. I soothed him. "Yes, let's go home." Then I nodded toward Calvin and the others in farewell. "We'll be leaving first." Calvin raised his hand and gave a slight wave. "Goodbye." "Never again." I sighed inwardly. Running into Oscar after 4 years was far too sudden. Of course, I wasn't naive enough to think he had been pining for me all this time. Oscar never lacked women. Still, meeting him was bound to be awkward. Better not to see him at all. Lucas and his partner's investor turned out to be Brown Bear Media. I found out at the celebration party. Brown Bear was a subsidiary under Oscar's family's corporation. "Jennifer, what's wrong?" Lucas turned to me, his eyes full of laughter. "Nothing." I stood and raised my glass with everyone else. We were all still young, our hearts brimming with boundless dreams. Brown Bear's investment was the best catalyst, pushing Lucas and his team infinitely closer to their goal. I cursed myself for overthinking. Oscar was who he was. He would never pay attention to a fledgling animation studio. Yet 3 months later, Lucas was taken from the company by the police. "Mr. Lucas, you are involved in an economic case. Please cooperate with our investigation." Lucas looked bewildered. Whispered gossip rippled around us. I frowned. "What's going on?" One officer shook his head. "We can't disclose details before the investigation is complete." Mario stepped forward, his tone light. "It's just cooperating with the investigation. We all know Lucas. He'll be fine." Lucas also seemed to collect himself. He turned back to me with a smile, comforting me. "Jennifer, don't worry. I'll be back soon." I stood there stunned, watching Lucas disappear through the doors with the police. Mario, too, stared in that direction. When I looked back at him, I caught the flicker of complicated emotion in his eyes. Days later, I left the detention center empty-handed. They refused to let me visit Lucas. My phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. I answered, and on the other end came Oscar's indifferent voice. "Jennifer, let's meet. I don't think you really want to see Lucas end up in prison." The world roared in my ears. All the unease and doubts I had buried in my heart unraveled completely. Oscar, he had never given up. I pushed open the door to Oscar's office. He had been waiting for a long time, leaning back against the sofa, legs crossed, his calm gaze meeting mine through the lenses of his glasses. Sit. I forced my tone to stay steady. What did you do to Lucas? Oscar smiled faintly. Jennifer, after all these years, the very first words you say to me are about Lucas. Lucas is my fiancé. I sat down across from him, enunciating every word. Oscar lifted his eyes. Your fiancé embezzled funds from Brown Bear's investment. 1 million. Enough to land him 5 years in prison. My hands clenched. Lucas would never do that. You set him up. You trust him that much? Oscar nudged the file folder on the desk toward me. What a pity. The evidence is solid. Solid evidence meant, if Oscar chose to pursue this, Lucas would spend 5 years in prison. His life ruined. What do you want? 2 choices. Either Lucas goes to prison, or I let him go. Oscar's gaze settled on me. And you come back to me. Oscar, you're sick. My anger burst out with bitter laughter. The corner of Oscar's lips curved. I'm only putting everything back on track. On track? Yes. I chased you for 2 years. But we never actually. Not just 2 years. Oscar cut me off. His tone firm. Jennifer, it was never meant to be only 2 years between us. Yes, in another lifetime, Oscar and I had loved, married, and ended in tragedy. Jennifer, make your choice. Oscar removed his glasses, his eyes unwavering, confident in victory. From what I know, Lucas's family isn't wealthy. His father suffers from heart disease. If he were to suddenly learn his only son was in prison, he probably couldn't take the blow. It felt as though I was seeing Oscar for the very first time, or perhaps this was his true self all along. All the gentle facade stripped away, leaving nothing beneath the surface but ruthless calculation. Chapter 5. Oscar bought an apartment in the city for the 2 of us to live in. It wasn't large, but it had a whole wall of floor-to-ceiling windows, wooden furniture, and warm-toned decor. Compared to the empty and desolate villa in Wangshan, it was far better. He acted as if we were truly in love, dutifully playing the role of a boyfriend. In the mornings, he drove me to work. In the afternoons, when I left the company, he was already waiting at the corner. One day, when I came home, I unexpectedly found Oscar in the kitchen, trying to cook. I fell silent. In my previous life, it had been me who learned to cook. Back then, Oscar's mother had thought my job at the magazine was beneath me, and she had forced me to resign so I could fulfill the role of Oscar's wife. When Oscar tasted my cooking for the first time, he looked genuinely happy. At first, I also felt a little pleased to be acknowledged. But as time went on, I grew weary. After quitting my job, it felt as though my entire world revolved around Oscar, and I gradually lost my own identity. In the kitchen, Oscar looked serious. Though his chopping movements were clumsy, I couldn't help but speak. Actually, we could just hire a maid. Oscar plated the sliced vegetables without even lifting his head. Jennifer, I can do it. Just wait outside for a bit. Dinner will be ready soon. If it weren't for seeing him work late into the night in his study, I really might have suspected that he had been stripped of his heir status to be this idle. Oscar took me to a party and introduced me to his friends. They greeted me warmly, though their gazes carried a trace of curiosity. Someone asked how Oscar and I ended up together. With a faint smile, he replied, "We were classmates in high school." Later, after going through a lot together, we just naturally ended up as a couple. High school sweethearts. Huh, that's really enviable, one of his friends said. I glanced at Oscar, and his smile remained unwavering. Seeing that they were about to dig deeper into the topic, I excused myself and slipped away. The private club was tastefully decorated, with dim, intimate lighting. As I walked out of the restroom, someone suddenly bumped right into me. The girl who had crashed into me looked up, tears sliding down her delicate face. Her eyes filled with fear. I froze. It was her. Behind her, people came chasing. Calvin strolled forward at an unhurried pace, his eyes impatient. What are you running for? Then, noticing me, his tone softened a little. Well, Jennifer, you're here too. I instinctively pulled the girl behind me. What are you doing? I asked. Calvin narrowed his eyes and smiled. Just having some fun. Don't believe me? Ask her. Then he cast a glance at the girl. Well, come here already. The girl kept her head bowed low, her body trembling. After a long hesitation, She began to take reluctant steps toward him. I grabbed her wrist and said, "She doesn't want to." Calvin reacted as if I had just told him a joke. The corners of his lips curved up in a mocking sneer. "Do you even know how much she costs for one night?" Time seemed to freeze, then shift and fracture. In my previous life, Calvin had taken that girl away. The next day, she jumped from the 30th floor, wearing only a bathrobe. In the news feed, her gray-haired father clutched her portrait. During the interview, he choked on his sobs, unable to speak. Lying on the sofa, Calvin complained to Oscar, "What the hell are those trashy media outlets even writing? Saying I drove her to her death? What bad luck. She jumped herself. What does that have to do with me? And her family, just a bunch of paupers. The moment their daughter dies, they come crawling for money. Fine. Let them try a lawyer. They won't get a single cent." Oscar hung up the phone and reassured him, "A few media outlets overstepped. The arrangements are already in place. Those reports will be deleted soon." I stood to the side, my whole body cold. That was a human life. What does that mean to you? At my words, Calvin turned his gaze on me. Slowly, he sat up, a mocking smile curling his lips. "Jennifer, do you even know how much she cost for one night? She was selling herself. And now she wants to play the pure and virtuous martyr?" "Calvin." Oscar's tone sharpened. A warning. Then Oscar turned to me, his voice gentler. "Jennifer, this was her own choice." The man before me wore a relaxed expression, even a soothing smile, as if the dead girl had absolutely nothing to do with them. That was the first time I caught a glimpse of the cruelty that lay beneath Oscar's gentle exterior. And afterward, I gave Oscar the cold shoulder on my own, then reconciled. Oscar apologized to me, but I knew he never thought that he or Calvin had done anything wrong. It was a gulf between us. In his world, people could be treated like playthings, but in mine, they could not. Sometimes I even wondered if the one who had jumped had been me. Would Oscar have just as indifferently said, "It was her own choice"? Silence spread in the air. Calvin tugged at his tie. "For Oscar's sake, I won't argue with you. Jennifer, stay out of this." "How much?" Calvin arched a brow. "I'll pay you. She doesn't leave with you," I said calmly. What kind of despair could drive someone to jump from the 30th floor? I didn't know, but this time, I was determined to stop the tragedy. "Jennifer, do you really think you're being noble and special right now? Acting like you're some savior, rescuing the fallen, right? Ha, so righteous." Calvin leaned closer, his once handsome features twisted with malice. "Well then, Miss Righteous Jennifer, how do you see Oscar now?" The stench of alcohol on his breath was suffocating. I grabbed the girl's hand and turned to leave. "Stop right there." Calvin's voice suddenly rose, sharp and commanding. "Young Master Calvin, don't get angry over a woman." A man pushed through the crowd and came to Calvin's side, trying to persuade him. I recognized him. It was Mario, Lucas's friend. The youthful brightness that once marked his face was now replaced by obsequious flattery. So that was it. Lucas had been betrayed so easily because he had a brother like Mario who had already been bought. Mario avoided my gaze, and I sneered coldly in my heart. "Disgusting." I murmured. "Jennifer, I didn't give you permission to leave." Calvin shoved aside the people around him and stepped forward. "Calvin." Oscar's figure appeared at the corner of the corridor, his voice calm and steady. "You're drunk. Stop making a fool of yourself." I quickened my pace, pulling the girl behind me as we left. Outside the towering building, the lights of the city glittered and intertwined, endless streams of traffic stretching toward the horizon. The girl stared out the window, her tone tinged with melancholy. "The city is so dazzling. I sold myself just to get closer to this prosperity, but it feels like this place never truly accepted me." Her beautiful eyes turned to me, curving softly as she smiled. "Thank you. I've decided to go back home. It's poor, it's rural, but at least I'll still have dignity." "Safe travels," I replied with a smile. Chapter 6. After we returned to the apartment in the city, Oscar brewed a cup of herbal tea and handed it to me, with one arm wrapped around me. His voice was gentle. "What happened tonight was Calvin's fault. I'll have him apologize to you another day." "There's no need," I replied. "Jennifer, are you still upset?" "I'm not upset." I lowered my eyes. "In the end, Calvin or anyone else has nothing to do with me. Oscar, you don't need to go to such lengths. You and I only have a 3-year agreement. Oscar's gaze darkened. Amid the rising steam, he let out a quiet laugh. I couldn't tell what that laugh meant. All right. Oscar stood up and said to me, I'll shower first. You should get ready. The night felt unusually long. I stared at the chandelier on the ceiling, letting Oscar do as he pleased. In intimacy, he was far from the gentleman he appeared to be on the outside. Instead, he devoured and consumed as if determined to possess me completely. The light swayed. Realizing my distraction, Oscar bit down hard on my shoulder. The pain spread through me, and I realized only lovers who truly cared would find joy in such things. Amid the repetition of emptiness, I heard a sigh fall softly against my ear. The next day at work, I received a text message from Mario. We met at the cafe downstairs from the company. Holding his coffee, Mario hesitated for a long while before finally speaking. Jennifer, could you say a few words for me? Ask young Master Calvin to give me another position. I lifted my eyes to him. And since when am I so influential? Mario chuckled awkwardly. You get along well with Calvin and his crowd. Aren't you working on an animation project with Lucas? I asked. He shook his head, his tone dismissive. Animation doesn't make money. So that's your reason for betraying Lucas? Mario's expression froze for a moment, then smoothed out again. He spoke slowly. Betraying him was actually good for everyone, wasn't it? You. Of course. I know the whole thing with Lucas was a setup. Oscar planned it as a trap for you. I just had to do my part for the money. Lucas trusted me. Whatever documents I gave him to sign, he didn't read carefully. It was easy. You were willing to send Lucas to prison for money. Some friend you are. I said mockingly. Mario's face darkened. But he didn't go to prison. Did he? Weren't the terms of you being with Oscar that Oscar would spare Lucas? Jennifer, you should be thanking me. Without me, how else would you have gotten close to Oscar so quickly? On the surface, it looks like you were coerced. But who knows if you actually enjoy it? It's Oscar. After all, I was about to speak when a voice suddenly cut in. Mario, you're fucking shameless. Lucas sprang out from behind a potted plant, seizing Mario by the collar, his eyes bloodshot. Why was he here? Lucas, let him go, I urged. Don't waste your anger on someone like him. Mario pried Lucas's fingers off slowly, adjusted his clothes, let out a cold laugh, and turned to leave. Looking at Lucas, his eyes red, I sighed. Jennifer, why did you hide this from me? I stayed silent for a long time before finally saying, I was afraid Oscar would hurt you. Jennifer, Lucas held my hand. I'm an adult. I can face my own problems. I don't need you to sacrifice or trade yourself for me. You don't understand Oscar. He'll stop at nothing to deal with you. Lucas's voice was steady. I'm not afraid. My gaze wavered, unable to form more words. Sincerely, Lucas said, I can be careful, or I can even move to another city for work. Jennifer, more than going to prison, what I don't want is to see you with someone you don't love. Just because of me. Jennifer, leave him. Let's go somewhere else and start over, okay? His expression was fragile. I lowered my eyes and finally replied, I'll think about it. That weekend, Oscar's company had an emergency meeting, and I stayed alone in the apartment. The doorbell rang. When I opened the door, it was Oscar's assistant. He nodded politely. The president left some documents in the study. I came to pick them up. I let him into the study and helped look for the files. When I pulled open a desk drawer, one file was slightly ajar, revealing half of a photograph. After the assistant left, I picked up that file. Inside was a thick stack of photos. One by one, I looked through them. They were all from my university days, taken in secret. Me attending class, reading, eating, even hugging or walking with Lucas. Every moment had been captured and delivered to Oscar. He had been watching me all along. A chill spread through me. Oscar was far more terrifying than I had imagined. I even felt a sense of confusion. If I really honored this 3-year agreement, would Oscar actually let me go afterward? I put the photos back in place and leaned against the floor-to-ceiling window, sitting there until dusk crept in and the entire apartment fell into darkness. When Oscar returned, he didn't turn on the lights. He fumbled his way over and sat beside me. I caught the scent of cedar on him. Jennifer. He said my name. I looked at him but gave no reply. Softly, Oscar said, "It feels so good, just to sit quietly with you like this." Chapter 7. I decided to leave. The flight was booked for Friday. Lucas and I would go to City C, abandon everything here, and start anew. Fortunately, my parents had spent the past year traveling around and were still away. I didn't need to explain much to them. The night before we left, Oscar gave me the newest perfume by Codis's chief perfumer yesterday. Under his expectant gaze, I smiled and said, "Thank you. I really like it." That was a lie. I had never liked it. In my previous life, when I had to attend countless social gatherings as Oscar's wife, I had needed some presentable hobbies, so I had chosen perfume. Clearly, Oscar had taken it to heart. I didn't take much with me, just my documents, with everything prepared. Lucas and I got into a taxi to the airport. The scenery on both sides blurred as it sped by. Lucas held my hand, his warmth burning into me, and I felt a fleeting illusion that we were eloping. "I'm sorry," I told him. Lucas pressed his lips together, looking displeased. "I hope you're apologizing for giving up on me so easily." I nodded. "I won't ever do it again." The taxi drove onto a wide, empty road in the suburbs. Suddenly, several cars cut across from the side, blocking us from front and back, forcing our cab to stop. The driver opened his mouth as if to curse, but after a few whispered words from the men who got out, he fell silent. Oscar yanked me out of the car, his expression dark. Lucas was restrained by 2 bodyguards, unable to break free. His mouth was gagged, and muffled sounds came out. MMPH. MMPH. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded through clenched teeth. Oscar's pitch-black eyes fixed on me. "Jennifer, you broke your promise." "And the consequence of breaking a promise?" Oscar forced me back to the villa at Wangshan, the place where he had lived since childhood. A sharp click. I looked down at the thin silver chain fastened around my ankle, my breath catching. I shook my foot, the chain clinking softly as it dragged against the bedpost, its sound swallowed by the thick carpet covering the room. "Oscar, this is illegal confinement. It's against the law." Oscar merely smiled, unbothered. I lowered my voice. "Aren't you afraid I'll call the police?" "Jennifer." He reached out, caressing the side of my face, his gaze tender. "All of your friends and I can testify that we're in a relationship. Calling the police won't help you. Besides, you won't have the chance to call." Oscar locked me inside his room, taking away everything I could use to contact the outside world. During the day, he was usually absent. Only the housemaid came by at set times to deliver food, clinging to her like a lifeline. I begged her to call the police or contact my family and friends, but the maid kept her head down, avoiding my gaze. At night, Oscar held me, his chin resting on the top of my head. Smiling, he said, "Jennifer, no one will help you." Confined in a space of just a few dozen square meters, with no one to speak to except Oscar, the days dragged on endlessly, monotonous and suffocating. Time lost all clarity. It was as though I had been severed completely from the outside world. And gradually, I even began to anticipate seeing Oscar. That was his goal all along. I resisted with what little sanity I had left, by going on hunger strikes, screaming curses at Oscar, or smashing things. But Oscar handled everything with ease, as if he had already anticipated these reactions. After barely 2 days of hunger strike, he had me sedated and put on 4 nutrition. Sitting at the edge of the bed, he watched over my powerless body. "Jennifer, do you remember the first time we met? Back then, you didn't know me, but you smiled at me so brightly through the window. At the time, I thought it was strange, but later, I found myself wishing you'd always smile at me like that." I ignored him. "Jennifer, we were always meant to be together. We've been through so much. You'll fall in love with me, marry me, and become my wife." Oscar's gaze was fixed and stubborn. "Jennifer, you were the one who liked me first." I shook my head weakly. I regretted it. Wasn't I allowed to regret? Outside, the shadows of trees swayed, gradually gilded with a golden edge by the setting sun. Oscar spoke more and more often about the past, about my previous life. This life, all of it blurring together, and I grew increasingly silent. That was clearly not the result Oscar wanted. Chapter 8. Late one night. Heavy rain lashed against the windows. Oscar burst in, reeking of alcohol, and locked the door behind him. He had never touched cigarettes or liquor before, but that night, no one knew how much he had drunk. Oscar clutched me tightly, his grip almost crushing. His voice was disordered. Jennifer, why is it that after everything started over, everything has changed? Jennifer, I don't want children anymore. I won't force you. You can do whatever you want. Just be yourself, anything at all. Do you remember? You said you loved me, that you would never leave me. In this life, I had never said such words. Yet he asked me so pitifully, as if I had betrayed him. I patted his back, trying to soothe him. Oscar, calm down. Why are you drifting farther and farther away from me? Oscar, rarely so unrestrained, was drowning in the illusions of the past, refusing to break free. I coaxed him gently. I'm right here, aren't I? By your side. He pressed his weight down over me. The chain on my ankle pulled taut, and the pain made me cry out. Startled, Oscar quickly bent down to check if I was hurt. Oscar, I softened my tone. Please, unlock it. I won't leave. He nodded, fumbling out the key, his fingers trembling. The sudden absence of restraint around my ankle felt alien. I glanced at Oscar, then stepped back several paces. Without hesitation, I pushed open the window and leapt out. Jennifer! His voice pierced the storm as he rushed to the window. I scrambled up from the wet grass, limping as I headed for the gate. It was humiliating, but I couldn't let myself be caged any longer. Oscar quickly caught up. Rain streamed down his hair as he tore off his glasses and flung them aside. I watched him warily. Oscar seemed to sober. His lips twitched faintly. Jennifer, I'll take you to the hospital. The rain poured harder, hands gripping the steering wheel. Oscar's eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. The car sped faster and faster. I shrank in the passenger seat, silent. Jennifer, if Lucas had never appeared, would you have loved me? He asked, glancing at me. I didn't have time to answer. A blinding white light flared through the window. The blare of a horn roared. A truck barreled straight toward us. Oscar wrenched the wheel to the right. A deafening crash. The truck slammed into the driver's side. The violent impact hurled me into unconsciousness. After the car accident, Oscar was severely injured and admitted to the ICU. I borrowed the hospital's phone, called Lucas, and left without looking back. The truth was, I had once loved him, loved that gentle illusion, but later, the love faded, and Oscar revealed his possessive and domineering side. It had all been a mistake from the very beginning, yet years of my life had been consumed proving it. The news reported that Ming's heir, Oscar, had recovered and been discharged. For a long time, I lived in fear, worried that Oscar would never let me go. But in the end, it was Calvin who came. He brought me a message. Oscar's lost his memory. He's forgotten everyone. Calvin smirked. Congratulations. One less thing to worry about. I looked at him suspiciously, doubting he could ever be so kind. He narrowed his eyes. Let me tell you a story. A long time ago, Oscar had a dog. He treated it very well, fed it imported dog food, played with it, spoiled it with toys. That dog only ever trusted him. Back then, I was an ass, so I deliberately teased the dog, tried to win it over, and I succeeded. The dog wagged its tail whenever it saw me, even wanted to follow me home. Calvin continued. Later, Oscar poisoned that dog to death. I frowned. Why? Oscar, you see, always acts like nothing matters to him, but once he considers something his, he'll never let go. If that thing slips out of his control, he'd rather destroy it than let anyone else have it. You're comparing me to a dog? I looked up at him. Calvin spread his hands. You attracted his attention. Bad luck for you. I was actually looking forward to seeing how long you and Oscar would tangle with each other. But it ended in tragedy instead. Now it's over. Better for everyone. Jennifer, don't ever appear before him again. I never saw Oscar again. Only when I caught sight of him in the news would I feel of fleeting days. Years later, at the premiere of Lucas's latest animated film, I attended by his side. In the crowd, a young man in a black suit sat in the front row. His profile was gentle, familiar. Lucas shot him a guarded glance. I squeezed Lucas's hand, smiling softly, signaling him to relax. From across the distance, Oscar's gaze brushed past us, paused for just a moment, then slid away. It was the look one gave to a stranger. The screen darkened, then lit up again. This film is dedicated to my wife. Amidst a ripple of kind laughter, Lucas winked at me. Surprise? I pressed my lips together and smiled. In this lifetime, years and time itself would prove that my love with Lucas would last forever.